let me just ask you, Imam, if you would introduce yourself and tell me about your masjid and who you are.
I am Tamir Mutakabbir. I have a congregation in Statesville, North Carolina. It's the only mosque in Iredell County. Well, I take that back. There's one mosque in Lake Norman. The mosque that I lead is in Statesville, and they're both in the same county. I have been practicing Islam since I was a 10th grader, and that was in 1970. So now you know how old I am. I was 67. I have a famous birthday, which is 9/11. So I was 67 years old, 9/11. Okay. And yeah, and so I have a boy and a girl. The girl is teaching at Texas Southern University. She's in the education department, and my son works at the Charlotte Airport. He teaches the customer service representatives how to do their job. Okay. And so I'm happy that they haven't given me headaches, and I'm happy. And I've been married for 44 years.
Congratulations.
Yes, and I've enjoyed that. I enjoy retirement. I retired from the chaplaincy with South Carolina Department of Corrections, 2014. And so I've been just helping the community. My biggest project is building a mosque, and I've talked to the architect, and they call him a topical surveyist. I've talked to them, and we're getting on the way for Statesville.
Congratulations.
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
What is the name of your mosque?
Al-Mu'minun. It means the believers. Mu'minun is the believers. So in English, it would be the Believers Mosque. I love that name. So my predecessor, Hannah Hassan's father, I think he was responsible for that name. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And how long has that mosque been in existence?
At least 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I found some old newspaper clippings, and I was able to just kind of deduce, that is at least 20 years old. But none of the members, I've been talking to the members, and we're trying to pinpoint the year that it started, but we know it had to be at least 20 years old.
Okay. And yeah. My students will be watching a video that I did with Hannah Hassan, and I just want to make sure they understand the connection. Her father, she talks about growing up in Statesville in the mosque, and her father was the imam, and her father was your predecessor.
Yes.
In the ministry where you are now.
Yes. That's correct.
Great. Terrific.
And he left me something to work with. I want to be sure. That's a great thing. Our property was already paid for. All we need to do is put a building on it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you about you. You said that you became a Muslim when you were 10 years old. Is that right?
10th grade.
10th grade.
10th grade in high school. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you became a Muslim when you were in the 10th grade in high school. Tell me about that. Yeah. How did that occur?
Well, I had a close friend who was in the mosque at the time. We used to call it a temple, at the temple at the time, and we were close friends. And I was amazed at his depth of knowledge. And I think because him being a Muslim, he knew things that I didn't know. I was learning. And so he invited me to a meeting, and and when I heard that minister preaching, there was no turning around for me. I just kept going, and I just kept going and kept learning, kept going, and I'm still doing that. So he's in Jacksonville, Florida now. We're still in contact with each other, and he's kind of special because he introduced me to Islam. And at the time, it was not. I would not say that it was pure Islam, because the organization that I joined at the time was the Nation of Islam back in 1970, and it was not like it is today. Elijah Muhammad was the leader, and his son took over, And he is credited, the son is credited with bringing us into the Orthodox Islam, which I'm so happy I was able to make that transition, because so many people didn't. Some people couldn't make it.
Right. And that would be Warith Deen Muhammad, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Warith Deen.
And he took the nation after Elijah Muhammad's death. He became the leader of the Nation of Islam. And because he had been to Saudi Arabia and had studied Islam, he knew that there was a gap between what Orthodox Islam taught and what the nation was teaching.
Absolutely, yes.
And he moved the organization into Orthodox Sunni Islam, basically.
Yes, that's correct.
And the organization went through several name changes.
Oh, yeah. The World Community of Islam in the West. And of course, from the nation, he was called the Supreme Minister of the nation. And then he left the nation, just kind of defunct. And he had several new names. I remember the World Community of Al-Islam in the West. I remember that one.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of
forgetting. Then one of them, I believe, had something to do with the Islamic Mission or the Muslim Mission.
American Muslim Mission. That was it.
Right.
Yes. American Muslim Mission was another one. Yes. And
then he ended up with, I believe, the Mosque Cares organization.
That's right. That's his ministry. That's right. The Mosque Cares. Absolutely.
Meanwhile, Louis Farrakhan was one of those who could not make the transition. And he and some folks who were close to him broke away and reestablished the Nation of Islam that exists today.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I just wanted to make sure that my students had all of that kind of history in mind, because the Nation of Islam as it is today really is a sort of a relaunching of that movement after Warith Muhammad had moved towards Orthodox Sunni Islam. So I wanted to make sure that we...
And the important date is 1975. February of 1975 was the death of Elijah Muhammad, and that began the leadership of Imam Warith Deen Muhammad. And so that's an important date for us, 1975. A lot of us took the Shahada. Some of us had never taken it, and that's the oath that you take when you become a Muslim, And so that's an important date for a lot of people, because we're getting older now. So I've come from a teenager all the way to 67 years old,
So I think Warith Deen Muhammad's ministry is really significant, because he is responsible really for this sort of indigenous African-American Islamic movement, which is culturally different from Islam that has come into the United States with immigrants from other places around the world. And so what would you say is distinctive about that movement that you're a part of?
Well, the best thing that I've heard in all my years of being affiliated with Imam Warith Deen Muhammad, I have heard immigrant Muslims who come here from other countries. Several of them have made comments. They say, you guys practice the religion better than we do. Because see, when you're a new guy, when you're new, you don't want to miss anything. You want to learn all that you can learn. And they notice that we do things that they have forgotten to do. And it's refreshing to them. We've met several of them who say it's refreshing to see Muslims trying to do things right. And so that to me, that was important. When someone who was born Muslim in a foreign country, and they come and say, we're glad you're here. You help us. And so when things happen around the world, they come and sometimes they get a consultation. I'll give you an example. We had a brother who was from Egypt, and he was in business, and he wanted to run for city council in the city of Statesville. And so he came by to see me. He said, "What do I need to do?" I said, "You need to sponsor a baseball team. You need to show that you're doing some things in the community, and people who need things, if you're able to help them, you help them, and so he didn't win, but he became a fuller and a better person by trying to become a city councilman in Statesville.
And so you talked to him about how to engage civically and become
Yes.
to put in roots into the community.
Right? There you go. Yeah. People still love baseball.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think that's an important thing, again, Warthin Muhammad's movement is in tune because it is an indigenous African American movement, in tune with the needs and concerns of the African American community, the way immigrant Islam would not be and could not be, right? And so I think that's an important factor and an important aspect in its appeal. And its ability to minister to people.
Oh yes.
So I want to make sure that my students pick up on that as well. Is there anything else about that you would like to talk about?
Well, you know what? I think Imam Muhammad was courageous and brave when he openly stated, because the Nation of Islam was racist. There was no European Americans were not allowed. They couldn't even come to visit. They were turning around at the door. So when he made his statement and he began to practice interfaith relationships, it helped a lot. And I have a family at the mosque in Statesville. You just would not believe. In fact, I would highly recommend that you interview a lady called Linda. Her name is Linda Bartow, and her husband is Tom Bartow, and they live in the city called Macon, North Carolina. And she has written several books. Her first book, I think it's probably the biggest hit, was entitled Hillbilly Muslim. Okay, and she proudly calls herself a hillbilly. Okay, and she made a trip to Turkey to, I'm going to say, increase the membership of Christianity. Mm-hmm. Okay, and she came back as a Muslim. And so her husband, her son, I think her son is an international family. I think her son is married to a Filipino who, it's a small group of Muslims in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. I think they call them Moros. But anyway, they live right there in Macon, North Carolina, and they're the hillbilly Muslims. And it amazes me that she's proud of it, and she gives a positive spin, because I think in the African American community, I can't say everybody, but they may view a hillbilly as negative, something negative, a redneck and that sort of thing. But she
not just in the African American community.
But she has been a real refreshing experience, her and her family. And matter of fact, if I'm sick and I can't go to Statesville to do the Friday prayer, her son, he steps in and helps us out. So he's like an associate imam in the mosque. So they've been really a good experience for us. So in that mosque in Statesville, we have a big diversity. We have people from Egypt, people from Pakistan. We have an African community from Guinea-Conakry, which is right next to Mali in West Africa. And so we have the European, we have the African American, we have the I'll say, I don't know, I'm gonna call them Guinea-Conakry because I don't think they're not African Americans. They still have their culture. We love it when we have Ramadan and they cook. They have different food, and it's just a refreshing experience. much richer than it could have been if we just only had African Americans, you know. And so now I have a challenge on my hands right now. I have 3 Guinea Conakry women. They're Muslims and they want to get married. And so, you know, they expect the imam to see if they can find some decent men to marry, you know. And so that's one of the things that keeps me busy in that Statesville Mosque, you know. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. From your perspective, what is the heart of Islam? That is, at its essence, what is Islam all about?
I would say peace, because if you know the word, and I can use English to describe this, Islam has sa, lam, and mim. That's like a S, an L, and an M. Those are the root letters for the word peace. And those letters are in the word. The proper way to say it is al-Islam. That's the way it's pronounced in the Quran, al-Islam. And it literally means the peace. Or you could also say the submission. You're submitting to what God wants. And so that would be the heart. Peace, trying to cultivate peace, trying to keep peace. That's the heart of it. But the geographical heart, I'm sure you know, is the Kaaba in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. Yeah.
So would you say that the struggle then of Islam, because the word jihad means struggle, right?
It means struggle.
The inward struggle, right? The struggle is to submit to God's will, but when you're able to do that, you find peace. Would that
yes. That would be correct. And there was a time when the Prophet Muhammad was coming from a battle. And then when he was coming back home, he made the statement, and now we're headed to the greater battle. And the guy looked at Prophet Muhammad and said, "What do you mean? We almost killed back there in this battle, you know?" And he said, the inner battle is the greatest battle. When a person is fighting with his own self to do what's right, that's a hard battle. And I agree with that. I think it is the greater battle of struggling with yourself to do what you know you should do.